When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode.
Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ken. Wow. That was, I'm like fast forwarding that in my mind, like, I did all that? Wow.
Yeah, impressive journey, Mark. I'm so grateful to have you here. Really appreciate, you being on the show and sharing your experience and skills and really the things that you've done for this industry. The first part I'd like to get into, it's really on the podcast, we like to call it leading with value. So what's one thing right out of the gate that you could share with our audience that they can take away as actionable for them?
Yeah, it's simple. You can DM me on LinkedIn, set up a quick call, take a few people and they need some guidance, some hope, inspiration, or they just can't figure this thing called physical security or corporate security. Maybe we can offer them the Cliff Notes version and shorten their transition maybe by 6 months to a year. And as you know, Ken, it's all about who you know in this industry. It's not, you can send your resumes all day to an Indeed and job app or whatever, but it's usually the back channel that make the doors open. But yeah, I'd be happy to have a call with somebody, help out, give some advice and guidance.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really appreciate that. And you're absolutely 100%. It's about the relationships, right, that you build over time. And if I could go back, start all over again, I certainly would have spent more time doing that and made more of an effort proactively to build relationships and community. And so really appreciate your time in offering that. We'll provide a link to your LinkedIn profile so people can connect with you. I'd also like to offer to our audience, for those listening in, I've written a couple of ebooks and utilize the coupon code or discount code of Fortify, 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 and I'll provide a link in the description of the podcast where you can actually acquire those for free. There's a couple of ebooks that I've written, security leaders to business leaders, as well as another ebook that has to deal with transitioning, folks that are transitioning from the public sector, things like the government, military, former law enforcement, and they're trying to transition into the private sector space. So again, use the coupon code Fortify, Fortify, in the link that I'll be posting in this description. Well, along those lines, I think in terms of your career story, Mark, certainly you've spent time in the military, you understand that transition. What can you share with someone who's listening in, who's either, almost coming to a point at which they're going to be doing that, or maybe they're a year out or so, but is there anything when you think back in terms of when you made your transition, things that were helpful for you, whether, there were specific actions that you took, or how did you prepare yourself ultimately in making that transition into the private sector, and perhaps share maybe a story or two that would help people?
Yeah, how I did it was I had some friends in a different industry, met in Portland, Oregon, went at a conference, and we just started talking. The guy was a Marine as well, and he goes, "Hey, if you need a place to crash in Orange County, stay at our place for a little while." Like, oh, okay. And it took me 6 months to a year just to work on getting my guard card in California. I'm coming from Oregon, so I had to make that transition, make a couple trips. I lived was going up and down that I-5 corridor quite a bit. And it took about 6 months to get that guard card, exposed permit, and get your approved for your CCW. And I had made the thing with me was making connections with different people that can, hook me up. And just met a lot of people, did a lot of coffees, a lot of lunches with different people to figure out, I'm from Southern Oregon going to Southern California, Orange County, not knowing anybody. I'm still wearing blue jeans and a flannel shirt and tennis shoes and a baseball cap. That's what we wore in Southern Oregon, And I'm like, oh, I got to change my wardrobe. Okay. People's like, yeah, you may want to change what you wear down here because you're looking like you're a logger dude or something like that. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And so it was basically a mental shift that I went through. Gave myself about 6 months to a year to get the permits, fingerprints, all the paperwork, admin stuff you got to do just to be licensed up to work in California. Took about a year, and exposed and the classes and all that. And then just basically knowing somebody who knew somebody was the key. My first job was with Pinkerton. They had an Indian reservation contract years ago, 15 years ago in Southern California, a very well-known Indian tribe that they're on. And I jumped on that. The guy looked at my, resume and goes, "Oh, you're a Marine? Okay, you're hired." He was Navy, and that was, Robert Dodge. Shout out to Robert Dodge.
Yeah.
And that was going back almost 20 years ago. Then, the
Wow.
rest, fast forward, the rest is history. And I think back then it was truly the mindset of each day on the job is truly an interview. It's
Yeah.
not this industry is not like you put 20 years in as a teacher or 20 years as a nurse. It's a lot of ad hoc work. It's I think it's tough on the young people because they're used to collecting paychecks every 2 weeks. And this industry is very, yeah, you might get lucky. And I think the young people see the money versus what they could do somewhere else. And we have an RST detail taking place in the West Coast. And it's like like she has great customer service skills, has a concealed carry permit. And she said, well, what I make in 1 week, I can make that triple in 1 month doing this. I'm like, oh, she had no background, but great customer service skills, always on point, always awake at night shift, always doing her job. And I'm like, huh. And it just takes the right mindset. But for those transitioning, I would work on making the moves now. It's going to take you 6 months to a year to get the proper licensing done, the testing done, the time taking the classes and all that, and getting the approval by whatever state you're trying to apply for. California is takes a little bit longer because it's such a big industry. Texas is even harder. You have to go through a psych eval in Texas to even get on the job. You have a psychologist that talks to you, meet with you, and there's different levels in Texas. PPO levels equivalent to the EP level we have in California. So it's got to give yourself 6 months to a year for that transition, and then just work on networking like crazy. Do a lot of lunches. Keith Ortiz is really good at that. Shout out to Keith. He wants to, if he's in town, he wants to meet people and do lunch or dinner, and he's really good at doing that and posting whoever he's having lunch with or dinner with on social media. Hey, making friends from the industry, and it just network online. I'd say use social media to your advantage, and especially the young people. They got Instagram and all that stuff figured out. I'm still trying to figure out how it works. I think LinkedIn is probably your most reliable source. Yeah, just be careful who you connect with. We're going to vet them before you start become BFFs with them, best friends with them. Just make sure they're legit, and stand-up people, good character, kind of vet the people you're associating with, especially getting in the industry. There's a lot of unscrupulous characters in our industry.
Yeah.
Cautious of the power of association is huge in this industry, and people will
Yeah.
judge you based on your association.
I couldn't agree more. I think key for me, and I know I've heard you say this before, is getting in front of people at conferences for that very reason, right? Because there's so many things that are happening online, and people you never know who you're dealing with when you're dealing with folks online, even on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is really the sort of de facto place. I mean, there's really no other place that
Mhm.
you're communicating with people in sort of a business framework. So, you have to be on there, right? You have to be engaged. There's no question. But I think, to your point, it's you have to validate these types of relationships, and there's no better way to do that than attending these various conferences that I know you participate in, you sponsor, you support. You're very active in terms of what you do as an individual and business. So, Nicole, can you mention some of the conferences that you recommend people
Yeah,
attend
sure.
and participate in that might be helpful for our listeners?
Yeah, for the guys, the folks that want business, I would suggest your vendor looking to make some money as a company. You're starting out. Everybody knows of IPSB, also knows the Close Protection Conference. I think Chuck Tobin is now the president of that, and Chuck Randolph, and you have the entire board, Shane, Ryan Flannery, you got Caleb Gilbert and several others. If I forget your name, James Hamilton and several others that are on that board. A few people I really don't know that too well, but that's strictly a volunteer organization. They don't make any money on that. That's nonprofit. Like some others I know are trying to make profit, but they're legit. And if you're in Silicon Valley, of course, Silicon Valley Security Group, I'm a member of that. We've done several sponsorships with them. Shout out to Ricardo and his team, the board there, for what they do for the industry in the Silicon Valley. As is, we all know about as is. From a corporate standpoint, for standardizations, I know they're stepping up the game in the last year to work on the committee for executive protection, which is definitely needed in our industry just to raise the level of the game. And so as is GSX, I think we're having one in Atlanta, Georgia coming up soon. And then you have, I think EP Access with Christian West I'm doing EP access mixers all over across the country. And I think that's truly the game changer because people will tell you more stuff in person because some people aren't phone people. They just aren't. They don't even like being on the phone. You get with them in person and they will disclose a lot more information to you in person because it's a privacy and it's a trust factor. And I always get so much more information about things that are going down at conferences like, oh, wow, that's happened. Oh, wow, he did that. Oh, wow, she did that. And you get all the dirty juice of the industry. We're all human. We all do silly things sometimes and we're human. And so I think that's where the vetting process starts with a lot of big players. And once they meet you in person, they go off the vibe, the energy you give. And I think the young people need to bring in that energy to the conferences. Clean yourself up, put on a blazer, put on a nice star shirt, and represent yourself. Nike and MJ, you know who that is. Well, be that for yourself and brand yourself like what you're doing, Ken, and your new venture in podcasting and your website is not that difficult. And social media, I think these young people are brilliant on running social media, Instagram. They get it. I don't. I have a team that does it for me, but learn how to utilize those platforms in a positive way because most of the stuff we see on social media is just like, a lot of it's garbage. And so this information, that information, who knows what's true, who knows what's facts. And
Right.
just, I'd say get off social media if you're a young person trying to break in the industry and grow yourself, work on personal growth, go to these conferences, ask for lunch with somebody, ask for Ken. If you want to meet with Ken, ask for lunch or a dinner with them, offer to pay for their time. Pay for the dinner. That's a business gesture. Ask a lot of questions. It's okay to ask a lot of questions. That's what I did with Robert Dodd early on. I was always picking, I thought he was the smartest guy in the room. Guess what? I want to be around the smartest people in the room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't really want to hang out with the average Joes. I didn't want to be average in the business. Nothing wrong with the average Joes. But if you want to elevate yourself in the career, you gotta get around people that's going to challenge you and kind of poke you a little bit to motivate you. And I think the younger generation, they're afraid of a little poke here and there, a little constructive criticism. I think they get a little butthurt too easily.
Yeah.
Be honest, we just got out of COVID, so I've seen a huge laziness mental streak that's hit the country, especially in executive protection world. People think they're worth X, and I'm like, sir, you only have a CCW, not like you're Delta Force or something. People have a high esteem of themselves, and I always taught myself this: you're replaceable. Even Mark Ledlow's replaceable. You're not all that in a bag of chips. Sorry.
Yeah.
So somebody younger than you that can come up right behind you, take that job. Just that's a reality of life, and so you got to earn that every day you work. You got to earn those relationships of trust. And this truly is a trust driven relationship. But the conferences are, I think the battleground for self improvement, even though the young people, oh, it's just a waste of time. And the same old people talk on the stage as well. There's a reason why the same old people are talking on the stage is because they earn the right from their peers to be there. They have something of value. And maybe you need to look in the mirror and say, what do you have to offer that's value? Maybe you need personal growth. And I think these young people, this younger generation, I think I hear they think we're a joke. Oh, I got to pay for that. Yeah, it's part of business. And they think this should be handed over to them. And so I think there's a mindset that needs to be altered and shifted on investing in oneself, personal growth and professional growth. Those as is, IPSB, TAP, OSAC. If you're a business owner, there's some mixers and forums going on. Almost like people invite you. You get invited to those parties and you get invited to the table, but you got to earn that respect of those decision makers too. And if you want to grow your business, once people start noticing you, you start doing a good job. Like I think I'll put it this way: some of the biggest players in this industry have zero on social media. Zero. They don't post anything. Why? They don't need to. And if you find out who those people are and pick their brain, why do they operate that way? I think the young people think, well, if I start blasting everything on social media, what I do, will help my branding. Actually, it'll be opposite, counterproductive, especially in the security industry.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly is a challenge as we move forward in sort of this next generation. And so hard lessons, points well taken. I think it's been, a challenge for quite some time. And I remember talking about this during my time at Cisco and uh, really trying to emphasize that sort of the next generation, the folks that we saw there and during our recruitment and hiring process. They just had a different take on their work ethic and work-life balance and all of those sorts of things. And they weren't necessarily as committed to what we were doing in terms of the mission and what we were tasked with doing, and really being this sort of 24/7 365 and having
Mhm.
that level of commitment to the job. And so as we move forward, and we're talking a lot about next gen now, and thinking about how do we motivate these people, how do we incentivize them to perform. I think it's unrealistic to set a bar or an expectation
Sure.
that we had, right?
Yeah.
Because we're
True.
coming from a different generation, right? Our approach
Hmm.
to work is certainly completely different. And so I think, and I really believe this, Mark, is that I think it's a mistake if we're
Hmm.
trying to get them to conform. I've seen that happen. I've seen
Hmm.
leaders try to do that, right? Trying to get
Yeah.
individuals to conform to the way they'd like things done. And my take is that we really have to focus in on what's truly the motivating factors behind these folks, and think more along the lines of how we can develop them professionally. So a big thing that I tend to focus in on, the whole idea of this personal development, we have to be participatory in that planning
Hmm.
process. In our
Sure.
day, they would put it back on us like, okay, your career development, that's your responsibility. As an individual, that's on you, right? What you want to learn, or the path you want to take, you're going to have to figure that out. You're going to have to, determine what that looks like, and how you're going to get there. And I honestly believe that leadership needs to be more participatory in this career development process now, because I think that's the only way these folks are going to be able to respond to our needs, right? As teams, as organizations, as businesses, as we move forward, and trying to get them to recognize there's certain things that they need to understand and develop from a skill set, and understanding that, look, it's going to take a little bit more than what your expectation is as an individual. And I'm not asking you to conform to what we're doing, but what I am asking is that we need to work together collaboratively to determine where you're headed, how I can assist you to get there, what are the specific things we can do to help you succeed and grow. And I think that's really the sort of the key, right? Is helping these next gen folks grow and develop. They put a lot of emphasis on that. The career ladder is I hear from a lot of people I listen to, and a mentor of mine, Ron Ricci, talks about how the corporate ladder is dead, and that
Interesting.
it's really about a career story and these chapters as we
Mm.
continue to move forward and
Right.
build. And it's really about what the next chapter is, that next segment, and what is it going to do to help me as an individual build and grow, and how I'm going to be able to make a difference, right, with the work that I'm contributing. And so the idea is really to continue to build upon your entire career story as you continue to navigate forward. And there's not necessarily a clear path to say, okay, I'm gonna go to work at a single location or single business, and I'm just
Hmm.
gonna move up the ranks, right?
Right.
I'm gonna, become a supervisor. I'm going to become a team lead. I'm going to develop into a director role, and then, a senior executive leadership. That really doesn't exist anymore. People nowadays, or it's much more common for folks to work a year, 2 years,
True.
and then bounce and head on
Bounce.
to that next role, right? Because their expectations are different. First, they expect to be sort of recognized right out of the gate. They expect to be promoted very quickly. So their expectations are much different than yours and I were. So what are some things that you think to help the next gen as we continue to try to develop them? Because I mean, obviously they're the future, right? They're the
Hmm.
folks that are going to be, guys
Hmm.
like you and I, our time's passed, right? Right. I'm not in that front right passenger seat anymore, man. So, those days are long gone. And now we're in a position to help those folks. So understand why, the why behind, what they're doing, and as they navigate their careers. But what do you think, Mark, as we head forward, and what do you think are some of the most important things? Because when I listened, I had other guests, and I look for key things in terms of what made them successful, there's things that are very foundational: adaptability, their ability to be flexible, lifelong learning, understanding that they've got to embrace change. So there's these things that have to deal with a lot of things in terms of how they approach the way they perform work. But what, in your opinion, do you think is helpful for folks, for next gen people, to really have an idea or understanding of that may help them in their career?
Well, it's really simple. Ask one question. Why do you do what you do? What's your motivator? From a leadership standpoint, I need to know what motivates my team. And then B, if you find out what motivates them, my job as a leader should help be driven to help them get what they want. If you're all about me in your leadership position, people are going to ignore you and disrespect you. There's no loyalty of bond that can be formed or created. In the Marine Corps, I learned this, find out what the person's motivation is. And once you find out their motivation, get into the psychology of what their life foundation looks like. Get to know them, take them out to lunch, take them out to dinner, spend some time with your ground troops. We'll call them ground troops. I'm going back to my Marine Corps days, but find out what they're going through. Find out what type of family life situation they live in. Once you get to know that, you understand how they fit psychologically in your organization and your culture. And I think a lot of people just don't care. It's a job to do. Show up, do your job. Show up, do your job. Well, the favorite saying the young people have right now is, I want to be happy. And that's what we had. That's the reaction I had too, Ken. We had one of our team leaders, teammates on a team, we had a team meeting, and he goes, well, I just want to be happy. I'm like, and then a couple of guys said, they're in their 50s, like, be happy. What baloney is that? Yeah. You got to pay the bills. Regardless if you're, nope, I want to be happy. If I'm not happy, I'm leaving. But I'm not making fun of that. But that is strictly their mentality, because they watched their mom and dad work 2 jobs and they just grew up doing video games, Xbox. Let's be honest. And they have a different motivation for work than we ever did. Then a lot of them they're very smart, and you find out the motivation, find out what their family dynamic looks like, and you will be able to work 10 times better to see what their drive and motivation is and help them exceed in that. So I always say for myself, I'm like, if I can help my teammates get what they want, they'll help me get what I want. And it's a symbiotic relationship. It's not one way, because corporate's got it wrong. I think it's a one way. And these kids, they'll bounce on you in a second. They don't care, because their value is not your value. And that's where a lot of corporations are going wrong. They think, oh, this is our value, this is our structure. And basically the young generation giving them the middle finger saying, screw you, I'll quit. They don't care. They would rather be home, getting by, and just being happy. That's their thought process. And so we need to dig deeper to find out what their motivation is. And part of my strategy is taking care of my team. How I do that? Through profit sharing. Being a small company, we can do that. So if we made X per month, we did really well. The team knows how well we did. And if I don't take care of them, they remember that. With that said, you cannot buy loyalty. It's got to be earned. And the younger generation, that is something they really thrive on, I think. I might be off a little bit, but from what I hear, loyalty is a big thing. Friendships are a big thing. And yet you have to understand the way they communicate. Like you and me, we pick up the phone and make a phone call. Get 3 of them in one room, well, guess what they're doing? They're texting. That's just how they communicate. They think it's a waste of their time to talk on the phone because they have so many distractions. And so their culture is so different from ours. And, when I was cracking the whip trying to get into this industry, this thing didn't even exist. It was all meeting with people, interaction, FaceTime, building that trust. And so we need to help them bridge the gap on creating a community. They want to be part of community, but they don't trust anybody. The trust is not there, and that has to be earned. And so it's more about, I think, more psychology driven techniques and methodologies. Like I'm a big reader of John Maxwell on leadership, just leadership traits. And if you're in leadership position, you probably need to start reading leadership books and start implementing that content you read from those leadership books on how to be a good leader. Because from what I'm hearing, the leadership out there just reeks, and the young generation, they're not impressed because the leadership is not asking them what they want. They don't care. And that's why you're having this big friction right now. But we offer profit sharing at our company, and I, always do a little extra. Like, for example, I flew out, Nate, he had to go to the West Coast for something. And I just gave him, hey, I'll bump you to first class. Treat your teammates like they're just as important as you are. If you do that, they'll go a long ways. Treat them well. It doesn't take much. Spend a little extra, and it goes a long ways. But I know a lot of companies today refuse to do this. It's all about the bottom line. No, it's about the people. Take care of your people. Then they'll take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And again, it's those types of gestures that reinforce your earlier point about building trust and establishing something that's sustainable, right, long term, and they feel comfortable in doing that because ultimately that's to the point of them bouncing from job to job. It's, they're looking for certain things that they're going to be getting out of, these roles, these companies. And if you're doing those things that are meaningful to them, right, that's going to be sustainable for, your employees to stick around and perhaps not take that offer from, the company next door, or that,
Hmm.
slight pay raise where they're going into a new environment where they're comfortable where they're at and they're still building and they feel the value and the contribution that they're making. So really, really important and key. Now, we talked a little bit about social media, and candidly, I mean, even the reason I even started doing podcasting and things like that is that for me, I'm trying to meet people where they are, right? This next gen, when they look for information or communication, you're absolutely 100% right, right? They're texting, they're very much into short messaging. Email, they don't even use email, right? They don't even open up email.
They don't. That's true.
I came from 100% open email rate, right? That when I started, it was 100% email rate open. That's where I came from when I started. And now forget it. It's all about texting and very short communication. I kind of attribute that to why I think they have a problem communicating, is
Hmm.
because they're so used to shortening words and sentences, and they're not being face to face with people, and so they're challenged by the
Hmm.
interaction face to face. And so for me, I'm like, all right, I'm trying to help these individuals out. I'm trying to share, my mistakes that I made as a
Yeah.
young man, going through my career. But I need to understand that I have to meet them where they're at. Right. So I have to change. I have to
Hmm.
modify some of the things that I do, the way I communicate, the methods that I deliver communication. And so social media, it is what it is, right, Mark? It's not going to go away anytime soon. There's
No,
going to
it's
be
not.
the next platform, the next one coming along. And so I think that doesn't go away. So it's a matter of, okay, how do we leverage those types of tools in order to communicate with folks, the messaging that we're trying to put out? The other side of it is branding. I think you mentioned about, hey, getting away from social media, but part of it is like, I think you just have to be very targeted about and purposeful about very specific channels, right? Because of the nature of the content, or like TikTok's very different from Facebook, that's very different from Instagram, that's very different from LinkedIn. And so it's important to understand, what are these platforms primarily used for, and then what makes sense for you to be on them in terms of what you're trying to communicate and the audience that you're trying to attract or get information to. So I think, it's that
That's a good
balance
point.
of,
Good
it's
point.
a balance, right? I mean, and I don't know that we can get away from that, Mark. It's such a challenge, but
It's here. I think if the young people want to communicate with the older people, they got to think the way the older people think, and they refuse to. You come to my level. Like, nope, come to my level. And so you have this friction of how people function. Like TikTok, for example, I know most of the age group of TikTok is probably under 30. You're using it. And so knowing that, most of the potential agents are on TikTok. And so I use TikTok to send messaging out for training, what we're doing. And I know there may be some clients, EAs that might be in there because they're a younger age group. And so and then we put some stuff on there. But as far as, training stuff, all that stuff, that mainly goes to LinkedIn. But you're right. Each platform has a different purpose. Like X is now like a news feed, 24/7 news feed cycle. And if you know how to be intentional about how to use them, you can be very successful. And because the eyeballs are there. I mean, you have half the world on these social media platforms have been developed. And with the oncoming AI development coming in play, that's going to make it more intensified. So yeah, I think you have to use it. Most companies are on there because that's where people get their information. They're not going to call you get it. They're going to research you first before they call you, and then they're going to make a judgment call on who you really are, and it may not even be who you really are. But that's the opinion they're going to create based on the content you put out there.
yeah, no question. You have to be deliberate in terms of what you're doing. And I think that as we move forward and understand that There's going to be something new, something different right around the corner. AI is making a huge impact in all facets of what we're doing personally and professionally. But that's why I'm looking at this year for me, my word is authenticity, right? And it goes to your earlier point about getting back in front of people, face to face, the handshakes, right? Being authentic in terms of what you're delivering and what you're communicating in an age when everything is superficial and you don't know what's real anymore, right? So being
Hmm.
authentic is going to be critical as you continue to move forward and develop these relationships and develop the trust, right? So let's talk about the future. Mark, we've talked a lot about, career path. We've talked a lot about, different things in terms of helping the next generation of folks that are entering the industry. But let's talk about the future. And in particular, what's the future look like for your businesses, Ledlow Security? What can we expect? What can we anticipate from you as you look at what are you anticipating, in 2026? What do you see happening? Things that are important for you strategically? Can you share some of those things with us?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think 2026, it's obvious. It's right in front of us. You don't have to stay on social media to see what's taking place. And with that said, we have the midterm elections coming up. And so turmoil, there's always business in the security industry, and unfortunately. And so you have the elections, you have geopolitics taking place, affecting business travel. And so we're pre-planning. We have several relationships overseas now, internationally. We have a strong reach. So we're just getting prepared for that. You have a Super Bowl coming up. You have World Cup coming up. You have the Olympics coming up too. And so you have all these business travelers because the Super Bowl, what is it? It's a big party, right? All the executives, they're doing commercials and stuff. Millions and millions of dollars are being spent. So you have all the executives going into San Francisco in a couple of weeks for the Super Bowl. It's a big business party is what it is. And, our phones are being ringing off the hook, booking several drivers in that area, several agents in that area, clients calling. And now we're starting to get up with World Cup, and then we're licensed in Texas as well. We're preparing for that, and we're launching our chauffeur driving course. We did a bunch of West Coast classes. We had probably over 40 students attended that. And now I think we're pushing about 10 to 15 in Texas now. And we have a partnership with a partner who has access to some FBOs, private aviation airports. And so we'll be doing some good simulation training on the tarmac with the jet, getting the principal off the jet and putting him in the vehicle and going from point A to point B. So we're trying to give these agents more real world experience driving a client in the back of the vehicle from point A to point B. And there's a lot of great training courses out there, a lot of good schools out there, but we just had a client say, "Hey, can you help us out here?" I'm like, "Sure, yeah, why not?" And my team's been to Joe Lasorson, Christian West's course they put on, excellent course, by the way, that they did in North Carolina. And then Sage, Edward Marshall, and Josh and Chris Story over there, they have a great training program as well. And there's several others I'm not mentioning that they're out there for training, but that's what we're focused on. And residential security is where we've really thrived out in the West Coast. Site security as well. We've done a lot of risk assessment, threat assessment for audit stuff. A TCM is big. Account surveillance right now is espionage is big right now, taking off. But yeah, we get a lot of calls for international support too, and travel teams and interest in there. But I think after Brian Thompson's shooting, it just exploded the industry in the U.S. It's that one, and of course, we all know about Charlie Kirk, and everybody's just like, "Oh crap, what's going on here?" And everybody's just kind of freaked out. And the problem is, a lot of that is reaction to fear. And those jobs will probably last 4 or 5 months, and then the board will get together and go, "Well, then nothing happened, so let's shut it down." So you may make 4 or 5 months of money, then it's over. And then what? And I know a lot of people, discount doing guard work to stay alive, but if you look at all the businesses out there, guard work's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so we're looking at that. Probably get into the ARA farming stuff, construction stuff in Texas. We're looking into that potential for business. And then we're looking at, doing family offices is where we're definitely hyper focused at, and private equity and getting with law firms and stuff like that is kind of where we're in the direction we're heading. And we're licensed here on the West Coast, and, we're looking to get licensed on the East Coast now too, to spread that out. And just, for me, it's impacting the industry and making an impact on the veterans and law enforcement community. Because I had about a year or so ago, we had a job on the West Coast, and the guy moved to Dallas about a year later. We had lunch, and he told me that he was contemplating committing suicide because he felt worthless.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. He said, yeah, your job saved my life.
Oh, that's incredible.
I was not ready to do myself in with a pistol. I'm like, well, now I think what people ask me why I do what I do. It's like, it's not for me. It's for other people to give them hope and inspiration, even keep them alive. And a lot of people they struggle with all the misinformation. They struggle with the social media stuff. They suffer to severe depression. A lot of people are really struggling after we came out of COVID. It had a huge mental effect on people's mental health. And I didn't realize how significant it did until after we got out. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, it sounds like there's plenty of opportunity that's out there that's coming down the pipeline. It's unfortunate. It's one of those areas in which when all of this bad stuff happens, we tend to we benefit from that, right? Our skill set, our experience, all
Mhm.
those things come into play in the most challenging of times. So there's plenty of opportunity for people who are getting into the industry or who have been in the industry. There's certainly again, no shortage of issues, certainly in the U.S. and in this current climate that we're dealing with politically and everything else that's happening geopolitically. So thank you for being here and joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I know you're fighting a cold over there and trying to power through that and
Yeah.
launching your project for 2026. And I know digital media is where you got to be right now for the buyers and the consumers, and just edifying the industry, lifting people up, and adding value to people listening to your different guests that come on your show. And it's not that hard. Just helping each other is what we do: physically,
Yeah.
security, and business.